So, I've been watching some videos, doing a bit of reading, a bit of research, trying to get my head around the basics. And at some point, you just think, right, I'll have a go at an actual sample, see what happens. It did not go well. I opened this, got about 10 minutes in, and had to be honest with myself. I didn't know where to start. I could tell the code was obfuscated, but I didn't really have a method for dealing with it yet. So I closed it and went to find something I might actually be able to make sense of. Hey, I'm Dylan. Quick bit of context. I have a degree in ethical hacking. This had some malware analysis in it, so I've got a rough idea of some of the concepts. But there's a pretty big difference between sitting in a lecture and actually doing it. That's what this channel is, me trying to figure out that difference. I'm not going to pretend I know things I don't. I'm going to get things wrong, and I'll say so when I do. The whole point is just to document what it actually looks like, starting from basically nothing and trying to get better. This video is a pretty good example. After the first one beat me, I went looking for something simpler. Ended up on Malware Bazaar, filtered it down to JavaScript files. I figured a script might be easier to read than some of the other stuff on there, and I found this one. A JS file pretending to be a Nexus installer. Fake installer? JavaScript underneath? Seemed like a better starting point than what I'd just closed. Before I get into it, I am working inside a virtual machine, and the network is set to host only, which basically means it can't reach the internet. So if the file tries to connect to anything or download something, it just can't. I also took a snapshot before I opened anything, so I can just roll back afterwards. I did a bit of reading on how to set this kind of thing up before I started. That was probably the most useful thing I'd done before any of this. And this is where I made my first mistake. I opened the file, saw some stuff that looked like it was hidden or encoded, and just immediately started throwing it at CyberChef to see if anything came out. No plan, no clue what I was actually looking at, just, that looks suspicious, let's have a look at it. I think this is probably what most people do when they start. You see something that looks wrong and you just want to know what it is. But I was trying to decode the entire file before I'd even looked at what the file actually was, which, as you'll see, didn't really get me anywhere. So, strings just pulls out any readable text from a file. I'd come across it when I was reading up on this stuff and decided to try it, ran it, and got back basically the entire file. Turns out this is actually a HTML file, and once strings pulled everything out, I could just read it. The stuff I'd been randomly throwing at CyberChef suddenly made sense in context. The hidden bits were still hidden, strings didn't sort those out, but now I could at least see what they were supposed to be doing. I knew what I was actually looking for. The first thing that stood out, most of this file isn't really doing anything. It's just a fake interface, like the bulk of it is just there to look convincing. There's a header saying Nexus installer, a section labeled GitHub deployment, fake progress bars, fake repository information, and even a fake terms of service. None of it actually does anything. It's just there so whoever opens the file sees something that looks like a proper installer happening, like they know what they're downloading. I thought that was interesting. Someone put genuine effort into making it look real. It's not just code. There was a bit of thought behind how it tricks someone. Hello, it's Future Dylan here. So, I've just been editing the video and I've noticed something. So, I've recorded this malware about a week ago and I've been editing for it over the last week. And I realized something that I'm going to keep in mind for future reference. As you'll see later in the video, I'm not super confident on running the malware that I download. But what I didn't realize I could have done is cut out the malware section, the payload, and just run the HTML script, run the web page, and just see what it looks like. That will give me such an insight into what this malware is attempting to do. I know it's a Nexus installer, but I don't know what Nexus is. Like, I get it, I've done some research, but I don't know what it looks like. I don't know what the web page looks like. So what I did was, while I was editing it, I went back, cut out just a HTML script and ran it. And as you can see in the footage, it looks pretty genuine. to me anyway, on first glance. There's everything you would expect, buttons, you've got the files, everything like that. Now, it may actually do stuff. You might be able to click on those files, but to me, it doesn't look like you can. It looks intentionally real enough that someone who's not confident or someone who's just quickly trying to, click, install it, they might not notice. But if you take a proper look, and as you can see, if you click anything, nothing happens. There is no action to them. They look like buttons, but they don't go anywhere. And it's quite interesting that enough thought was put in to fool someone who's not confident enough, but anyone who takes more than a quick glance would realize it's not genuine. And I thought that was pretty interesting looking back. But anyway, behind the fake interface, the first thing the script actually does is run a bunch of anti-analysis checks. The idea is that before it does anything, it looks around to see if it's being watched. If it thinks it's being analysed, it can just stop or behave differently. So it checks things like VMware, VirtualBox, general virtual machines that are commonly used. It checks for stuff like x64, IDA, Ghidra, tools used for looking at code, amongst other things that look at network traffic and system activity. I don't really know all of these off the top of my head, but I recognise a lot of them. And then on top of that, it also looks at the username and computer name to see if they contain words like sandbox, virus, malware, test. Because apparently, a lot of automated analysis systems use names like that by default. Reading this list was a bit of an odd moment because I recognise most of these tools when I was setting this up. It's basically a checklist of things a researcher's machine might have on it. Further into the script, I found the part that actually runs whatever it downloads. And this was the bit that made me stop. It doesn't just run the file one way, it tries 5. Explorer, command line, PowerShell. There's a line using something called start process, and it also creates a VBS file and a HTA file as extra attempts. I'll be honest, I didn't fully understand every method here. I've made a note to go back to it, which is actually part of why the next video is going to be about PowerShell, because I kept coming across it in this file and I realized I don't fully understand it. But even without understanding every line, the pattern was pretty clear. If one way of running the file gets blocked, try the next one. Keep going until something works. Near the top of the script, there's a config section. The structure of it, I could read fine. 3 things. TG_token, TG_chat ID, and payload URL. The actual values were still hidden, but the names told me a lot before I'd even decoded things. I did have to do a bit of research, but TG stands for Telegram. Token and chat ID are how Telegram bots work from all the research I've done, and the payload URL, pretty self-explanatory. So I had a rough idea of what I was going to find before I decoded the values. I just needed to get those values out. The hidden chunks weren't all using the same obfuscation method, which was something I had to figure out as I went. The Telegram and payload URL base64. They're the ones that are a jumble of letters and numbers and end in equal signs. The other bits were more like names and labels throughout the file, which were using charcode, where each character gets swapped for a number. I'd seen base64 before, so I had a starting point with that. The charcode thing I had to look up, but once I knew what I was dealing with, CyberChef handled both without much trouble. The Telegram token and chat ID came out of base64. I'm not going to show the real values. They might be live and belong to whoever made this. But what came out was clearly a real bot. The format matches exactly what I'd seen Telegram bot tokens look like. The charcode stuff decoded to names and labels, just filling in some context. And the payload URL came out to a link to a GitHub page pointing at something called helper.exe. I'm gonna change the link so it's not live. Saw that in a few write-ups I've been reading, and it made sense to do the same. Once I had the URL, the obvious question was, okay, what actually is helper.exe? So I went to look. It was gone. The page was down, the repo had been removed. From what I can tell, that happens a fair bit when malware gets hosted on GitHub. Someone reports it and it gets taken down. So whatever the file was, I couldn't get to it. Honestly though, even if it had still been there, I wouldn't have known what to do with it. I'm only doing static analysis at this point. Just reading the code, not running anything. I haven't got to the stage where I know how to safely look at what a file actually does when it executes. I've read about it, I've watched videos, but I haven't done it. And I didn't want to just run something I didn't understand and hope for the best. So I stopped there. That felt like the right call. So, after all that, here's what the file actually is. It's a HTML file. When you open it, you see a fake Nexus installer. Looks convincing, has all the bells and whistles that you'd expect of a genuine installer. Underneath that, it runs a load of checks to see if it's being watched. If it thinks it's safe, it downloads helper.exe from a GitHub page. It tries to run it 5 different ways, and the whole time it sets up to send information back to a Telegram bot. I came into this with no idea what I'd find. I got a pretty good picture of how it works, minus what helper.exe actually does at the end. For a first attempt, I'm quite happy with that. And that's the first video. Started with something I wasn't ready for, found something more my level, wasted quite a lot of time clicking randomly on Cyberchef, trying different commands, eventually found a way in, and worked through it from there. I still don't know what the final payload does, and that first sample I showed at the start is still unsolved. But I will be coming back to it. The main thing I took away from this is that I really don't know enough about PowerShell. It kept coming up in the file and I kind of understood it, but not enough. So that's what I'm going to focus on next. Getting more comfortable with it so it stops being a wall when I come across it. Nothing exciting, I just want to fill in that gap. If that's something you want to follow along with, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.